again, everybody, and welcome to Two Man Game here on Claibs Online. I'm Bob Ramsey. That's Matt Rocchio as we get rolling into Game 5 tonight. But first, we do a quick recap. And even before that, Rock, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rammer. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I tell you, it has been admitted to and documented that um, for all of the NBA playoffs, I got every game prediction wrong until the last two games, games 3 and 4 here in the NBA Finals. And we're not talking about the score, but what we think will happen, how we'll get to the score. And I don't mean this to be cocky that I got two in a row because they're the only two I've gotten, but
Well, you're being honest. That's we were honest when we literally were getting everything wrong throughout the first few rounds of the playoffs, and we're being honest now as you're getting them right.
Well, actually, me more than you. You've been
Yeah.
more right than me. But I was not shocked, but as a fan, thrilled to see Steph Curry take over. And with the bad leg, as you mentioned, kind of a Willis Reed. I mentioned a Michael Jordan flu against the Jazz.
A lot more flu
And
game.
yeah, and step up and just be the best shooter of all time and a leader and a stud. And I really felt that was coming. That was the game, and it kind of went according to my script.
Yeah, there's a lot of really nerdy things I want to get into. Obviously, the minutia of this game, but overall, just to fawn at Steph Curry, I came to basketball kind of later in adolescence than I did other sports, and so like when I fell in love with basketball, I fell in love with college basketball specifically because I remember I'll never forget it. Actually, it's crystallized in my memory. It was at the fish fry in the grade school where I grew up at St. Gabe's, and later in the fish
The
fries,
Saint, wait. St. Gabe's fish fry is when it all changed for you.
yes, it is. This is a deep cut. So late in Lent, obviously, if you know the calendar, late in Lent, those fish fries start lining up with tournament games.
Of course they do.
And so
At St.
um,
Gabe's, yeah,
they start shut up. They start rolling. Excuse me for putting color onto the story.
I love
And
it.
so and so they would roll out like the TVs they would use for like the substitute classes. They would
Yep.
roll out those TVs to put on tournament games and stuff like that. And the first time I ever really locked into a tournament game was Steph Curry's Davidson run. That was the first time I really locked into a tournament game. I'd kind of been
Wow.
watching. I'd kind of been getting into the NBA for a couple years, and then I started getting into college basketball. And it was and that's when I locked in, first time ever, really to a tournament team, and started really going for something.
Hmm.
And that was, and then so watching what he did Friday night is just that's why I fell in love with basketball in a lot of ways. Is what Steph Curry is able to do in morphing a basketball court into, you know, I'm going to be corny here, but essentially a work of art in live action. That's what it was. I mean, that's what he
Oh
does.
yeah.
It's I mean, he started doing it back in 15, 16 when he would just pull up, and it was the only time in my entire life that I was like the bench. I think it was the Portland Trailblazers bench one time when they were playing the Celtics. And Larry Bird was doing such wild shit that they are laughing and like falling over each other on the sideline. It's some team in red and white. I can't remember which one it is exactly. And Steph Curry was the first time I'd ever just like laughed during a basketball game because it was like, this is inhuman what he's doing right now. And last night, not last night, but Friday night was a perfect crystallization of that exact feeling all over again. Except for in the first time in my entire life, I was rooting against it, and I actually felt what it felt like for all those people who hated the Warriors and Steph Curry for all those years when he would just absolutely go incandescent and murder your team and your feelings and your hopes and dreams.
Yep.
And that's exactly what he did on Friday for Celtics fans and Jayson Tatum fans. But it was incredible to watch, and despite the fact that it wasn't the outcome I wanted on a personal level, I wouldn't change it. If I wouldn't trade it for $1 million as a basketball fan because that was however you want to qualify it, virtuoso, magnificent, incredible MVP. It was just one of those times where you got to look back and be like, okay, when I hear about things that happen in sports history, and I'm like, wow, I wish I could have seen that. I got to remember I was able to see that.
what you saw in a finals.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly right. You wanted to go into some other details. Let me go with the next thing that has been on my mind about that game, and it's kind of been throughout the playoffs. And I brought it up a couple of episodes ago about, um, uh, from Sound of Music. What's the song? What's the problem with Maria?
Yeah,
Is that a song?
yeah,
Something
something
like
like that.
that. What's
Yeah.
the Anyway? So what's the problem with Draymond Green? And how do you play him, and the traps you can fall into on aggression or passivity with him. And obviously, the Celtics, for a game, figured out what to do with him. As you looked at it, what specifically did they do, or did he create a trap all his own?
It was yeah. The Draymond Green thing is fascinating, and one
Yes.
little footnote is that his mom tweeted about it, and she pretty much it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. She pretty much tweeted saying, "Stop asking me what's wrong with Draymond. I don't know. That's not my son out there." Essentially, is what she said. She goes, "That looks like a clone out there because that doesn't look like anything I've ever seen him do,"
He
which
was
is
disowned.
hilarious in so many ways. But I mean, he was having a bad game. I mean, Steve Kerr took him out with 7.5 minutes left in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter, and then they go on an 11-3 run that essentially seals the game. And I'll get into some specifics of that in a moment. But I mean, the bottom line is that the Celtics, who I think have had at times attacking certain matchups. They haven't attacked Bielitsa, although he's stood up pretty well when they have. They haven't attacked Poole nearly enough. And at times they haven't attacked the fact that they can sag off Draymond Green defensively enough,
Yeah.
and so it's just they haven't attacked the matchups offensively and defensively the way you have to in a finals to win, especially when you don't have the best player on the floor, which right now they don't. That's Steph Curry, and so finally just completely taking Draymond Green out of the game for parts of that stretch, and that's when they were leading. That was such a huge part of the Celtics. It was a great move on them defensively. Still, though, they weren't attacking mismatches offensively. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the Draymond Green thing is crazy because they figured it out. 7.5 minutes left. They take him out. They go with Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney, and Andrew Wiggins, and bang, they take a big lead. It goes from being down 91-86 to being up 97-94. And this is actually what the fascinating thing. We've been talking about coaching. We've been talking about making little movements, making little adjustments. And this is fascinating to me because I think that Steve Kerr really outcoached Ime Udoka in that game, and that's one of the big reasons they won. And this is fascinating to me. So, at 3:41, Draymond Green goes in for Jordan Poole for a defensive possession. At 3:21, after that defensive possession, Draymond Green goes out, Jordan Poole goes back in for an offensive possession. And then again at 3:05, when it's an offensive possession, they get another ball stoppage. Draymond Green goes in, Jordan Poole comes out. Then you get Draymond Green getting an assist to Steph Curry. Now it's 194. Now it's a 6-point lead. Then a minute later, a few possessions later, he gets an offensive rebound off of Steph Curry 3, which he would have assisted in the first place. They then get a secondary pick and roll, high pick and roll. They blitz Steph Curry, which they had not been doing the entire game, really up until that
Right.
possession. And
Right.
immediately he gets it to Draymond Green on the short roll, pass to Kevon Looney, 2-point bucket. Now it's 102-97, and we never look back. But continuing on in this theme, he goes out at 56 seconds, offensive possession, goes in at 47 seconds, defensive possession, gets a great move, gets a great pass in, and then the next possession they go with they take Kevon Looney out and keep him in because he was playing such great defense. So it was really crazy to see the dichotomy of the fruition of Draymond Green being a hindrance to the Warriors, finally coming to pass at 7.5 minutes in the fourth, and then from 3:41 on being a coaching clinic and defensive and team ball clinic from a Hall of Famer in Draymond Green in turning it around. I mean, 4 minutes changed almost 4 days of negative talk because Draymond Green came in and did exactly what he's supposed to do. He spread the floor in a way that he was still able to make his passes. He was key on defense. He set crucial screens, and he was just great in the passing game, getting out in transition and things like that. And they limited his exposure on offense by putting pool in. So kudos to Draymond Green. He gave a lot of credit on his podcast to Juan Toscano-Anderson and a couple other young guys for calming him down, to keeping him in the mindset where if he had to go back in, he could contribute. Well, he got the call 4 minutes later, and damn did he contribute, pushing the Warriors to a Game 4 win.
Do you think, and this might be overstating your point, which I think was perfectly laid out, but do you think in Game 3, it was a little bit earlier in the game, but the Warriors made that great run, right, in Game 3, but they couldn't stop a return run from the Celtics, who then pulled away. Do you think any of that could be a reaction to the way Game 3 ended, to say, hey, just because we've got a lead, I can't let it slip away again? Do you think that could have been a reaction? And if so, obviously it was a great reaction.
From the Warriors?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think there's kind of an intrinsic, championship mentality in a team that's won multiple, rings and has a coaching staff that has won multiple rings. And, Clay might not be at 100% physically, but mentally, the guy, these guys knows what it takes. And Draymond, clearly, I think, as a team leader, it still imparts that kind of energy and mentality, even when he's having a down game like that. So I think there is something to them being the more veteran team, to kind of having that moment when they can lock in and grind down. That's kind of what you're getting to. I think there's definitely something there. It's the intangibles are hard, and sometimes I hate assuming them, but I mean, it's hard to not look at a team with this much champion. I mean, literally, that Game 4 tied Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson with Ginobili, Parker, and Duncan for the most finals wins by a trio. I mean, you can't look that kind of experience. You can't just throw that away. That matters. Yes, it's hard to quantify momentum and experience and mentality and things like that, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And that that's you kind of break off into a little analytics versus eye test. That just because you can't quantify those things doesn't mean it's not there. Just because you can't prove exactly when those things enact and exactly when those things matter, I think they're there innately. You can define them, I think, in a lot of ways, and that's why I think words like momentum sometimes get overused. Yeah. But clutchness is another way I think of describing momentum. But those things are there, and I think that's exactly what you're getting to.
So before I wanted to tie into moving forward, do you have anything more on Game 4?
I mean, just kind of the conversation. The point I'll make is we kind of move us in from Game 4 into Game 5 just has to be that, Andrew, I talked a lot about Jayson Tatum in Game 3 stepping up and beating Andrew Wiggins off the dribble in some very crucial moments. And so I got to give credit to Andrew Wiggins for throughout Game 4 and a lot of the times in crucial moments of the fourth quarter, especially those big lapses in offense late in the fourth quarter by the Celtics offense. Andrew Wiggins played incredible defense, and his rebounding was obviously huge. That's been a big talking point for a lot of people, but his defense was incredible. Jayson Tatum went 3 of 10 for 7 points and 2 turnovers against Andrew Wiggins one-on-one. That's getting cooked in the fourth quarter, looking at the tape and coming back and playing a guy, who I think Jason's had some issues, with being a little bit passive, and his drives haven't been as strong as I think people want to see them. That's been the biggest criticism, but that's why. Yeah. That's when he dominated in Game 4. That's exactly what we saw from him, and I think that's
why finish rate.
Exactly, and we saw a hit from him, and I think that's what people are get bothered by is when they don't see it from somebody, is because we've seen it before from him, and everything about his game is now what we expected. His 3-point shooting has been stronger than we thought. I always thought he was going to be somebody who relied on that 14 to 18-foot game too much, and he hasn't been, but he just needs to finish a little bit better at the rim like he did in Game 3 when they won. Yeah. That's why they won that game. We broke down the sequence. They won that game because he was able to finish in those moments, and in Game 4, Andrew Wiggins played great one-on-one defense against him, and he wasn't able to finish in those same moments. That's the game. Sometimes it doesn't get more complicated than, hand down, man up defense, one-on-one. Sometimes the ball bounces off the rim one way and sometimes it doesn't. And that's kind of how it went. And so I think there's people who are overreacting and saying, Jayson Tatum, I heard it today on, not on First Take, but some show being hosted by Max Kellerman on ESPN, and he said Jayson Tatum hasn't had a good game yet this series. And
What?
I was like, that's a ridiculous statement because he's like, well, he's got
He just
26
got you
points.
to mention his name. You
Yeah,
lost.
he's got 26 points and
Stupid.
23 shots in game 3. That's not very good. I'm like, yeah, if you just want to look at stats, that's not good. But I mean, if you look at the beginning of the fourth quarter, then you can't tell me he didn't have a great game, and you can't tell me the 13 assists in game 1 weren't huge for him. And you know that, and that's kind of leading me to my final point on game 4. We said it earlier. The Celtics would rather have a game where he has a bunch of assists, where he has 26 and 12, than going off for 35 points. And that's exactly how the Warriors played it in Game 4. They kept doubling him, they kept forcing him, they kept saying, "We're gonna make you get your passes. We're gonna make you make clean passes on the run to shooters who are then gonna have to hit the shots." He
Yep.
at times did not make those passes. Had 6 turnovers. A couple of them were bad. And when he did make those passes, his shooters, Grant Williams and guys like that, they weren't hitting the shots they have been all postseason. So that's the formula in Game 4 for the Warriors to win. It just went their way.
So as we move into game 5, because it seems to me that each of the 4 games here in the finals has had its own distinct personality and has been different from all the other games in um, key elements, in standout players, matchups. I really think each game has been a different script. So as we get into game 5, I think a couple of things are going to have to happen. The difference in 3 and 4, rebounding for the
Yeah.
Celtics. Celtics have to dominate the rebounding, in particular, defensive rebounding. Obviously, offensive is good, but you've got to increase your opportunities and decrease the Warriors' opportunities. And the way you do that is no second shots. You and they lost all of that in game 4. They just
Yeah.
lost complete control of the boards and at home. I mean, to me, that was a bit of a head scratcher. In particular, with Draymond Green not having a great game, they just kind of lost focus on the importance of that. In my view, they've got to get back to that. And I think if the Celtics can do that, I think they'll probably win. And I think what the Warriors got to do, Rocc, is I think get Draymond Green back involved. It was said as an insult, but can he get a really good, solid single triple tonight for Golden State? Can he
Mean.
give me
Mean.
an 8-8-6
Yeah.
and play good defense and give me minutes? And could any of those numbers hit a 10? Then I think that's what will
Yeah.
make sure the Warriors win at home.
What do you score? What did he score? 3 last. What was it? 3-8-8 was I think 3-8-8 was his final line. In game 4. So I mean, he doesn't need to even have 8. He doesn't even have the 8-8-6. He just needs to have the 8-8 on the. He just needs to have the 8-6 on the back end. That's really what all
Yeah.
it is for him right now. And again, I think we're going to see. It's going to be really interesting to watch. Kind of you talk about what are the little things we're watching in some of these games. I think I'm going to continue to watch how often he gets subbed in and out. I mean, that was. I was really, it's such a nerdy thing, but I mean, I was really fascinated by the possession by possession subbing in and out of Poole and Draymond late in that game. I thought that was really interesting by Kerr.
It was terrific.
I'm interested to see how much and how stark do we see that happen. Yeah, he had two 9 and 8 in game 4. So he doesn't even need to score for them to win. And so when you talk about the little games and things like that, obviously I think we've seen how the Warriors and Celtics are generally going to play the Stars. So the question is obviously, first of all, does Jayson Tatum bounce back against a defense that I think has decided, the style we're going to see them play, where they're going to force him to be a playmaker, and he's going to have to hit his shots when he takes them. And so far, he has at times. He's just got to be a little bit more aggressive, I think, on the drive. Like we said, the three-pointers are going to come to him. They need to maybe work on taking a couple more shots in the paint. That's when they dominated the Warriors. Too many three-point shots in Game 4. I think that was pretty obvious. And then we see how the Celtics are guarding Steph Curry. So Curry's going to blow up. That's the big question is who then helps the Warriors alongside him. We saw Clay, Poole. Those guys played better in Game 4. Draymond Green had some crucial moments as well, and that's how they won that game. So Curry's going
Well,
to have his big game. Are there other Warriors who are going to step up? Is that 30-point game from Klay Thompson we talked about before the series, is that coming up maybe tonight in Game 5? I know we always talk about Game 6 Klay, but Game 5 Klay would be awfully convenient for the Warriors. Or does Poole finally have that big game? He looked a little bit more comfortable offensively. He still is a liability defensively, but again, with that Draymond Poole kind of switch, maybe that isn't as stark. But another Warrior's going to have to step up for them to win Game 5. I think that's clear.
the um, let me go back to explaining better or defending my Draymond Green point for tonight. Uh, do it better. It's sort of a continuation of the the continuity of no continuity from game to game. My previous statement, in my view, each game has been different.
Yeah.
The reasons for winning and losing have been different. And that's why winning with Draymond Green only, what do you have, 2 points, 3 points?
Two.
Two.
Dose.
I don't think that because we haven't seen the same thing happen game to game, I
I
don't
just
think that holds
I
up.
just I just don't know how I just don't know how he scores more with the way the Celtics
He
are playing. I
decides
mean,
to.
they are completely sagging off. I mean,
He decides to.
he's he can't hit he hasn't hit a three in the playoffs.
I don't know. Well, look, I'm just saying that I think if he does,
Yeah.
they will win. Obviously, they could win with him doing less as they did on Friday night. But here's the thing: while he's a really, really smart player, he's also a very emotional player, and I think he's going to have the kind of game it'll be tough to take him out in the same fashion they did on Friday. That will be a motivator for him. Now, will it? I'm going to make up a word. Over motivate him in that he gets out. He can't get out of his own way because he's trying to do too much, or does it make him become more efficient? Make a few buckets so that now the Boston defensive game plan is fakakta, and they got to now guard him because he's gonna, if you give him a shot, he's gonna take it and make it. So that's it. So the continuity of no continuity from game to game. That's why I think it's going to play out that way. Where I agree 100% with you. I don't think it's Game 6. I think it's Klay Thompson's night tonight.
You know what, on Draymond Green, listen, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen back in San Francisco. I think, again, I was big on complaining about Draymond and his illegal screens going into Game 3 and 4, mainly Game 3 in Boston, and he completely had to cut it out because he knew he wasn't going to get the calls in Boston. And I just wonder how much more confidence he has because he maybe can get away with some of the little stuff when he's got when he's got a little bit of the home cooking going, when he's got the crowd on his favor as well. I wonder how much that's going to play into it for Draymond. So I mean, I think if you're right, if there's any time for him to kind of kick his game into it and have that difference and really break the mold of what the first four game was, then tonight's going to have to be it. I just
Yeah.
have to wonder, and listen, that would completely, like you said, it would completely break Boston's game plan. I don't think it's going to be Draymond. I think there's a better chance that it's Klay, much better chance, or Poole. But again, I'm going to be watching how they're switching out Draymond and Poole as kind of an offensive and defensive sub. That's kind of fascinating.
Here's the other thing about
like a
Draymond. He's got to
volleyball
win
sub.
it. He's got to win his mom back.
Yeah, right. He's got to show his mom he's still got the offensive game. He's got to hit some of those floaters. He's got to go up strong. Just things he has not been doing so far.
The other factor ties into my point about rebounding, and they won't test it out till before game time. But Robert Williams, he's got to be a key, and I think if he can give them significant minutes, then that could be a huge key in Boston winning and dominating the boards. If he can't go or is extremely compromised, that is a bad sign for Boston.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just the play of Kevon Looney or an Otto Porter, Andrew Wiggins crashing the boards or if it was Robert Williams' knee acting up. But I mean, he was so much better in the first half than he was in the second half. And so, and when you have a guy who's got a bad knee like that and he plays that well in the first and then it falls off like that, again, you're playing one of the best coaching staffs in the league, and the Warriors have already thrown some roses at their feet. So it could have been those adjustments by them, but also you just have to wonder, are we getting a point where Robert Williams isn't going to be able to grind through it the way he has? He's come up from certain blocks and jumps wincing. I think the guy's playing through a lot of pain, and that's a big factor. And a lot of the Celtics role players have been pretty consistent. The guys like Grant Williams and such, they haven't hit some of the shots. Peyton Pritchard missed a big three that would have been key for them at a crucial time. I think that was in the third quarter. So the role players on Boston aren't really what I'm worried about. I understand why people are focusing on Tatum. Again, I think saying he hasn't had a good game is a ridiculous statement. But the
Really
fact of
stupid.
the matter is, we know how this. I think the Warriors are going to play him for the most part, and he's got to respond. And of course, he needs a little bit of help. And Jaylen Brown, who a lot of people are talking about as stepping up, more so than Tatum. I think you have to talk about Tatum bending the defense and allowing Jaylen Brown to attack. And when Tatum isn't able to do it because he's pulling up too early in the shot clock and things like that, you saw Brown's offense dry up as well in the second half. And so really everything going through the Celtics it's Tatum's, to stir the drink 100% in Game 5. He's got to step up. Again, it's not going to be scoring 35 points, I think, because they're going to be throwing doubles, they're going to be throwing hedges. But if he delivers the passes, the Celtics have shown they can have big games from deep, and I think that could be the case here in Game 5.
So make the pick.
I'm going to go Celtics. Celtics bounce back and they win in Game 5. Again, there's been no consistency. It's been odd the entire run of the playoffs, but I'm going to go with the Celtics. I think Jayson Tatum again has a better game. Celtics, we talk about rebounds. Another really simple thing is just turnovers. Jayson Tatum had a few bad turnovers, and you saw what happened. Kind of got a snowball effect, and the Warriors were able to jump onto it. The Celtics defense is so damn good. The Warriors are not winning these games in the half court. That's huge. That's the biggest mark, I think, of this entire finals. When we talk about this finals, and if the Celtics win it, it'll be the fact that the Warriors, for the first time maybe ever in their run, couldn't outplay teams in the half court. And that's what happened here. And so I think that's going to be the key here in Game 5. Tatum's going to step up. Curry's going to go off, but the ancillary players from the Warriors aren't going to be as good as the ancillary players from the Celtics, and that's going to be part of the big difference.
I really like the pick and the analysis. I'm going to put my 2-game winning streak on the line, and I'm going to say the Warriors because of Thompson and Green both play very well, and I think the Celtics can't win the battle of the boards for the second straight game, and I think that'll be the difference.
Yeah. If Williams isn't healthy, you're right. The rebounds are going to be crucial. That's going to be the big one. Here's one thing before we go. I just want to ask you: if Stephen Curry continues this, but the Celtics win,
okay,
should a losing player be a Finals MVP?
Well, it depends. I think it depends on how it goes. Before Game 4, I don't think I would have thought that he was clearly the best player of the series. Not saying that he's not the best player. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That he wasn't having necessarily the best series. In fact, I think Tatum is actually, his scoring average is higher right now, isn't it?
Oh no,
Anyway.
Curry's at like 35 after Game
4. Oh,
is
it 30? That's right, after Friday, 35.
Yeah.
But what if he doesn't do that the next 3 games?
Well, I said if he continues this and the Celtics win.
Well, but what if?
Just ignore my qualifier. Don't you?
That's too many variables.
I should have said no. You know what? You know what? I apparently I didn't learn enough from Frank Carsimano. No hedging. That should have been the beginning of the question.
Because for the Celtics to win and to win a couple of games, if that were to occur, Tatum would probably have 2 terrific games.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever wins, it'll probably be between those 2 guys for the tournament MVP or for the Finals MVP, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, again, if Jaylen Brown has 2 full games where he kind of puts together the 2 of the halves that he's had in game 3 or 4, he could push forward as the Celtics win. But again, I think that listen. That's what people are saying. But again, I think everything that a lot of what Jaylen Brown's doing is because of what Jayson Tatum is. The magnet, if you will. But I mean, for me, I'm just excited for tonight. These games, despite the fact that it was another 10-point game. The fact that it was 3 points or 5 points or 7 points within 4-2 in 1 minute, it just speaks for the fact that these games can go any way. I don't think any team has a huge advantage right now. I still think the Celtics, just because of their team defense, are the better squad, and that's why I'm taking them in Game 5. But this could go either way, and that's why locking in tonight's going to be so much fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and then we'll be talking about it going into Game 6, who will have the edge with 2 games left. And we'll see if there's any sort of continuity of Game 5 comparing to any other game in the series, or will it stand alone on its own with its own script like each of the previous 4 have gone. Rocc, we'll talk to you and before Game 6 and see where we stand. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely, Rimmer. Thank you.
That's Matt Rocchio. I'm Bob Ramsey. This has been Two-Man Game on Claibs Online.
From our roots in St. Louis, Royal Banks of Missouri is branching out to continue serving you with our locations in St. Charles, Jerseyville, Granite City, and now in Hannibal, Center, and New London. Royal Banks of Missouri, the community bank in your community.
At St. Louis Acura, new inventory is arriving daily, both new and pre-owned. Our buying team adds a higher level of personalized service that others can't match. We sell over 100 pre-owned vehicles monthly, and many of these are matched by our buying teams in Missouri and Illinois. As new Acura production ramps up, be one of the lucky ones to try the newest Type S models now available. Performance has never been so stylish and comfortable. St. Louis Acura remains committed to becoming better than ever for you.